The Commanders didn't go chasing big names on defense this offseason, but the moves they did make get a passing grade, at least for me. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders. Not only am I here doing it for you, with you on the Locked On Commanders podcast, but I'm also covering the Washington Commanders locally for WUSA9.com, as well as for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today, whether you're an everydayer or just checking us out. I appreciate you. To the everydayers who come through for every single episode, a special thank you goes out to you. And if you haven't already, please make sure you're subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. If this is your first time here, welcome to the show. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back again and visit us real soon. Continuing our offseason grades on today's episode, looking at the big picture, diving into culture-setting decisions like re-signing key vets and investing into the brand. And we're going to start it all off with a look at the moves that the team made on defense and why, even without a splash, the future looks improved. On today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. The defensive additions to the Washington Commanders rosters don't scream headline moves, right? But they make the Commanders tougher to block, smarter in the back end, and more versatile across the board. And that is why the defensive moves that the Washington Commanders made this offseason are getting a B from me. So a passing grade, right? Not a stellar grade, but a passing grade. And I'm giving them that passing grade for resisting temptation to make a major splash for the sake of just making a major splash. Absolutely, there were some big name players out there available, and absolutely the Washington Commanders could have gone out there and really heavily pursued one. We do know that they were in the conversations to trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals, and maybe this episode is going to be a little bit premature. The situation with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals has not been resolved, so potentially a move could still be made, and potentially the Commanders could still be involved in that move if one were to be made. But looking at the roster as it is right now, you have to appreciate at least that you have a team that's not just so desperate to go get a name, go make a move, go satisfy the talking heads, go satisfy, the fan base on social media and all that stuff by just going out there to make a move for the sake of making a move. Every single move that you see this Washington Commanders team make, even the splashy ones on the offensive side, they make sense. They fit what the overall message is from the team, and they fit just kind of what you would imagine seeing this team do. And when things pass the sniff test, as people will call it, it just gives you a little bit of confidence that you understand what is happening, you understand why it's happening, and there's some logic and some reasoning put behind the decisions. That doesn't mean that everybody agrees with every single move or loves every single move or even thinks that it's just going to solve all the problems, right? Very rarely does an NFL team solve all of their problems in a single offseason, but the Commanders did go out there and look to address at least the biggest part of their deficiencies, which of course was their run defense, looking to get bigger, looking to get stronger on the defensive front specifically. And really the main move that everybody talked about all offseason, starting off, was defensive lineman Javon Kinlaw, who from my foxhole, I look at as a low risk, high upside signing. He's a guy who's reuniting with familiar coaches, but getting a new opportunity to kind of reinvent himself in the National Football League. So when we talk about low risk, right, there's a lot of talk about his contract, and that might be where somebody who heard me say low risk guy might have scoffed and said, dude, this guy's getting paid $15 million a year on average. But again, like we've explained, and every day you'll remember this, breaking down his contract, if it doesn't work out so bad that the Washington Commanders want to move on from Javon Kinlaw next offseason, if they make him a post-June 1st release, they'll actually save $700K. So not a massive savings by any means, right? But the point is that this contract that's been labeled so bad by so many people is literally a contract that after 1 year, the team can get out of and save money if they really need to. Now, a pre-June 1st trade next offseason saves the Washington Commanders about $5 million in salary cap space. And yes, the contract is tradable because of the way that it's built. Over half of the guaranteed money is actually tied to bonuses, which means the team that trades for Javon Kinlaw next offseason, if that were to come to pass, would only be taking on about $5 million to their salary cap. So it's a movable contract. it's a removable contract from the Washington Commanders books if they need to. So again, low risk. You're really not putting a lot on it, and you're not tying yourself to him for more than just this one season, which obviously if you're signing him, you want to tie yourself to him for at least one season anyway. So talk about low risk, but the upside is there. First of all, there's the defensive fit, right? Javon Kinlaw, he knows his previous coaches, or he knows the coaches here from previous stops. San Francisco 49ers defensive line coach Darryl Tapp was there at the same time Javon Kinlaw was there, so they know each other. And Darryl Tapp knows the player, knows the student, knows the man. Adam Peters knows the man, again, assistant GM with the 49ers at the time that Javon Kinlaw was there. So there's that lineage and that history between the two. And then you look at this defense and Darryl Tapp having the ability to kind of tell Joe Witt Jr., tell the pass rush coordinators, like, this is where we think Javon Kinlaw can fit into our defensive plan. So it's a new opportunity. It's not the same defense that Javon Kinlaw played for in San Francisco, but it's enough familiarity with the player and with the skill set that you can have some confidence that they're going to be able to unlock some things when the time comes. If he does prove to be good in this team and that upside is met, then he could prove to be a little bit of a bargain. Now it's $16.2 million against salary cap next year. He's going to have to do a lot to be a bargain, quote unquote, next year, but still could prove to be affordable. And even if the team wants to keep him, but they want to reduce that amount, a very simple restructuring of his deal can cut that cap number in half if they even need to, which we'll get to a little bit later. Honestly, they don't need to really worry about it all that much. So again, familiarity with coaches, executives, a different scheme. It's not going to be 49ers Javon Kinlaw. It's certainly not going to be New York Jets Javon Kinlaw. So an opportunity for him to kind of restart, but also do it in a much better situation. So Javon Kinlaw, again, I have zero worries about him. And I think that the vision around him is at least based on knowledge and fact. This is not a projection from the purest form like it is with a rookie or a free agent that you've never coached or never played with, things like that. This is a projection based on experience and intimate interactions. Now, a couple of things that are projections based on reputation and tape: Jacob Martin and Dietrich Wise, two additions to the edge. Jacob Martin, more of an outside linebacker type. Dietrich Wise, defensive end. Role-specific rotational edge rushers that can add some juice, bring some experience. Now, I don't think Dietrich Wise is actually going to be a rotational player in the sense that he's going to come off the bench as a rotational guy, but I do think that that defensive line is going to rotate just like defensive lines usually do. But Joe Witt Jr., really good at kind of mixing and matching his defensive fronts and all those things. But I do think that Wise ends up being your quote-unquote starting D-end opposite of Dorrance Armstrong Jr., at least he'll end up leading being the second leading D-end guy in snaps when all is said and done, even if he's not the first guy on the field at that position every single game. He's bigger than Clelin Ferrell, stronger on the edge, probably a better pass rusher as well, despite the fact that he's bigger. So I think he's certainly an upgrade over Clelin Ferrell, who I think kind of will get relegated to a depth position, backup, rotational guy, whatever you want to call it. Jacob Martin is really intriguing. Less of a pass rusher from what I've seen on tape than Dante Fowler Jr. from last year, but a better edge setter, better run defender. So again, the focus on getting stronger, getting faster, or getting better against the run, I should say, up front. Jacob Martin kind of a part of that whole situation. Also, looking at some other defensive additions in the secondary, Jonathan Jones, veteran cornerback, comes in. He's got slot outside flexibility. He's really going to give Joe Witt Jr. some options depending on health, depending on matchups, depending on the flow of the game, things like that. Will Harris, a versatile safety DB, comes in. He can play down in the slot as well, but could also give you some boundary flexibility or some DB flexibility in the safety position as well. Letting Jeremy Chinn walk. That's a big topic. We've got a mailbag episode already, or a mailbag question about that very thing already to come here in later in the week. But letting Jeremy Chinn walk was a big deal. So how do Will Harris, how do Jonathan Jones, how does Tyler Owens, any of these guys really kind of help the team make up for that? That's really going to be a big part of when we talk about kind of regrading this team at the end of the season. We're looking back at the offseason and what they did. That's going to be a big question that we have to answer moving forward. So basically just smart spending versus missing a splash, right? Those types of things. Again, you want to see the splash move if it makes a lot of sense, but I always look back to defensive players in the past that have been splash moves that missed, right? Albert Hainsworth, Jason Taylor, two guys that kind of come to mind. Meanwhile, players like A.J. Brown, Christian McCaffrey on offense, when healthy, they tend to hit better. It's a little bit easier to bring a splash move offensive player in and know that it's going to translate than it is, I think, defense. Because defensively, while everybody runs, cover 3, cover 2, cover 6, whatever, like while everybody does that, how you interact with the people around you, how you read off of them, how you move inside specific schemes, it really does matter, because the defense, more so than the offense, is 11 guys relying on each other in order for the group to be successful. Whereas on offense, like if AJ Brown does AJ Brown things and Devontae Smith is off on his own, in his own planet, as long as he doesn't run into AJ Brown, AJ is still going to be able to be AJ. So if the Commanders were intentional about building smart on defense, the same mindset also showed up in how they retained key veterans and invested in their locker room and their brand. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and while the Commanders build quietly and methodically this offseason, you can take a more aggressive approach with FanDuel, the best way to make every game feel like a game changer. From baseball walk-offs and high-stakes international soccer to a little midweek golf, FanDuel has got you covered. You're already following the action, so why not make it just a little bit more exciting? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are just arguing about who's better at cornhole. I've been using FanDuel to track summer matchups, and I keep the app fresh with new daily promos and creative ways to play, same game parlays, live bets, and more. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even a regular season baseball game feel a little bit more like October baseball. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Culture setting and building does not get headlines in July, but re-signing veterans like Marcus Mariota and upgrading facilities shows that this team is building something bigger than just a roster. For those moves, I'm going to give this team a B. So we got another B, another passing grade, continuing to build on the culture, continuing to build on what they were doing last season and what they installed last season, and bringing back specific players is going to really help this team continue on with that path. We talked about the coaching staff yesterday and how important it was to bring all of those players back, all of those pieces back, and how impressive, or how impactful, I should say, that could be for young quarterback like Jaden Daniels, but also just the team in general. While bringing back specific players can also do the same thing, starting with Marcus Mariota, backup quarterback, mentor for Jaden Daniels, that big brother, former number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft himself, understands what it's like to come into a situation where you're viewed as maybe the face of the franchise, the savior of the franchise, all the pressure that comes with it, the commercials, the photography, or the photo shoots, all that stuff, and really just kind of be another person to help Jaden navigate through it. We all saw the clip of Marcus with Jaden during the Atlanta Falcons overtime victory, and kind of him, picking him up and just kind of help him motivate him, keep his mind in the right place. Well, that's not a new development. That wasn't like a one weekend thing. Like, oh man, Marcus did this against the Falcons. How great was that? No, this is something that Marcus Mariota did all season long. So having him back for another year in that same locker room. And oh, by the way, you love the way that he played when he needed to come in certain spots to relieve Jaden Daniels. So you love that, especially with Anthony Lynn, Cliff Kingsbury coming back, like just having that whole group back, and the key veteran in that quarterback room back for another year. Just absolutely incredibly important for the development of Jaden and for the continuation of the development of the offense and just the locker room in general. Also, wide receiver Noah Brown. I don't think Noah Brown's return can be highlighted enough. The number 2 wide receiver from last year coming back, even if his role is probably going to be diminished, right? He knows how it is. He knows how this business works. You don't go out there and trade for Deebo Samuel. Yes, I know it's a 5th round pick that they traded for him and all that stuff, but you're not going to go out there and trade for Deebo Samuel unless you plan to have a major role for him. So Noah Brown comes back understanding that his role is going to be a little bit diminished. He's going to kind of be that third guy in the pecking order as far as getting the ball, and that's just in the receiver group. You bring in tight end Zach Ertz into the mix and the running game and all that stuff, and you're going down even more. So Noah Brown coming back, it's more so shows just how much these players really do appreciate the environment that's being built up. Trent Scott, versatile backup player, possible swing starter in a pinch, first guy to ever catch a touchdown pass from Jaden Daniels. You love having him back on the offensive line. Really, they're a guy who just kind of gets whatever job he needs to get done. Speaking of which, Nick Bellore, special teams stud. Washington Commanders fans, you all know and love special teams aces, guys who are willing to do the dirty work that doesn't always get the spotlight. Jeremy Reeves, obviously one of those guys. Well, Nick Bellore is another one. And of course, Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz, right? 2 of the main guys who helped establish everything really helped get all these things rolling. Bobby Wagner serving as another big brother role for quarterback Jaden Daniels, who you love. Absolutely having those two guys back. I give it a B and not an A simply because of the loss of Jeremy Chin. And honestly, I don't think the Jeremy Chin loss is so much of a cultural loss, brotherhood loss. I'm very curious to see how this defense develops, because that is a role. The role that Jeremy Chin played on this defense is a role that, going back to Dallas and the Dan Quinn, Joey Jr. defense there, even Atlanta, Seattle, like that's a role that, you know, I've always seen and attached to this Dan Quinn, Joey Jr. defense. So without that guy, right, again, like Tyler Owens is kind of like that guy. Rob McDaniel, the undrafted free agent, is kind of like that guy, but like who is going to be the real mainstay, their second safety there beside Quan Martin? I'm really curious to see how that really kind of unfolds. Wasn't really surprised about the team not retaining De'Ami Brown. Really kind of thought, especially during that postseason run, he probably priced himself out, and certainly, you know, he goes out there and gets $10 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wishing him all the best out there, but wasn't really surprised by the loss of De'Ami. So beyond that, beyond just the maintaining the locker room culture and everything else, the team continues to invest in their infrastructure, continues to invest in their brand, and in connecting with you, the fans, at least attempting as best as they can. $100 million in upgrades across the organization will be reached this season. That's stadium, that's facilities, that's, you know, the business building, all kinds of stuff, just all kinds of upgrades happening across the organization. Some of them you guys see and experience firsthand. Some of them are just for the players. Some of them are just, you know, kind of part of the branding initiative. But again, $100 million in investment from Josh Harris and the rest of the ownership group. I think it's really just kind of, again, another way to evaluate how this ownership group is investing in not just getting talent, but getting the right talent, getting the right people in the building, right? Adam Peters was the number one GM candidate for everybody pretty much as soon as the hunt started. Adam is the guy that we all pretty much honed in on. Dan Quinn was not. Dan Quinn was like fourth or fifth on most people's lists, but they went out there and they didn't go after, you know, well, they did. They went to interview Brian or Ben Johnson, right? But they didn't go hire, you know, the Mike McDonald, the other sexy quote unquote names out there that they could have gone after a little bit harder. They instead go and they pivot to Dan Quinn. They get the experience, they get the foresight, they get the vision. And obviously it has really worked, and they're taking a holistic approach to this thing. It's not just a one-tiered attack. It's not just, well, let's get the offense great, let's get the defense great, or whatever. They're taking every avenue of the franchise and really looking at improving it, including the alternate uniform, right? That information came out Wednesday, July 9th. You will be getting a new alternate uniform for the Washington Commanders. No exact details on what it is as of now. Josh Harris indicated that it's going to kind of tie the heritage to the path ahead. You know, there's been a lot of speculation about it. Me personally, I think you're probably getting either the Spear logo or maybe like a version of the old Circle R logo, something like that, or, you know, or a conglomeration, a mashup of like all the historic logos and uniforms into a new alternate uniform. You know, just something obviously that connects to the past, but also moves forward. And I'll tell you, I don't think it's pandering, right? I don't think this is just the ownership group trying to, you know, say, okay, you know, there's a lot of people out there saying this and that and everything. Let's give them something, you know, just to kind of shut them up or whatever, because Commanders gear is selling. Like, as you know, I know that there's a lot of people who are resisting, a lot of people who don't necessarily want to, and all that stuff, but Commanders gear is flying off the shelves. It is selling like hotcakes. So really, if, you know, when there's several other billionaires out there that would do this, they would say, well, Commanders gear is selling, so let's wait on this until we need to spike sales, and then we'll release it. No, like, sales are spiked, but they're still giving you this. Why? Because one, they know you want it and they know you deserve it. Two, they want it themselves, right? Again, remember, several fans of this franchise growing up in the ownership group. So I think that it's an incredibly important move, and it really just shows you, hopefully, just how much this ownership group is in tune with what you're doing. Again, how much you or we or the public likes the new alternate uniform, we'll see. There's going to be some nervous moments, I'm sure, for the organization leading up to that reveal, but you can at least know that the new alternate uniform was done in the right spirit to connect heritage to the future, and hopefully make everybody really happy with enjoying that remake. Retaining respected veterans, investing in the brand builds credibility. But now it's time to zoom out and see how the entire offseason stacks up. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Commanders offseason deserves a passing grade overall, but again, how the pieces fit together will ultimately define how this approach worked after their 2025 NFL season. And of course, we will take time when that time comes to reevaluate everything. If we're coming off of a Super Bowl win, we'll just give everybody A's across the board. It's just going to have worked out no matter what. But the overall grade this offseason, we're going with a B here. 3.4 is the GPA that we come in when we plug in these grades. So a little bit of a recap from yesterday's episode and today's episode. Offensive line overall, I gave that an A. The addition of Laramie Tunsil, going big, not for the sake of going big, but going big because that's how important the position is. You get a guy like Laramie Tunsil, you have tons of tape on him at left tackle. You know who he is. His reputation is well known, things like that. And guys, left tackles, there's a little bit of an easier, I would say, 1-for-1. Like, we know this guy is going to translate to our system because, again, blocking is blocking to a certain extent. Not that it's easy, just keeping it a little bit simplistic here. Wide receiver rebuild, give that a B. Again, no top end talent. We'll see how Debo really pans out. Like, I have a lot of confidence in him. I'm not worried about the outside noise and people who are observing little cuts and highlights from tape and from other people's cameras and judging them. I'm more worried about what we're seeing in person, and what we're seeing in person does not concern anybody that I know that's on the beats. So I don't think there's any reason to be concerned as of right now. Coaching continuity and vision. You love the fact that the coaching staff is coming back, so you give that an A. And again, today's episode, defensive depth and versatility gets a B. Vet retention and the culture of the team gets a B. Overall, 3.4. There are 3.7. No, 3.4 is our grade. That's a B plus in my book. So very good offseason. Could even be better depending on the results. The team identity across all 5 of those groups, very deliberate, right? They're not going to do things for the sake of doing them. And again, while it can sometimes avoid or, leave you, devoid of like huge splashy moves all the time. I mean, Laramie Tunsil got a lot of traction. Debo Samuel got a lot of traction. But look at the Cincinnati Bengals, man. Like, giving T. Higgins that contract, giving Jamar Chase that contract, it just reeked of, look at us, shine a spotlight, right? Doing things for the wrong reasons. And now they're in a situation where not only is their top pass rusher unhappy with the contract they're offering him because they dedicated so much money elsewhere, they also haven't signed their first round pick, at least not that I'm aware of at the time of this recording, because they're trying to be stingy with him and his money. So ways to not do things, right? Does the roster feel like a long-term build still, or a win now team? I think that it's a little bit accelerated from the retooling that they were doing last year, certainly. But I don't think the team has necessarily gone just all in, pushing, all that stuff. I think if you do that, you'd see this team being a lot more aggressive, going after a guy like Trey Hendrickson, doing things like that. So I think they're still kind of maintaining their retooling pace and deliberateness, and let's evaluate as we go and keep our options open, but also being a little bit more aggressive than they were probably, or were anticipating being at this stage in their process. And then for me, the move that could hit the hardest, the move, so hitting is good in this case, I think is left tackle Laramie Tunsil, right? If he can come in and play Pro Bowl caliber left tackle play for Jaden, I think that no matter what happens with Debo, no matter what happens with the run game, giving your quarterback a more stable pocket is always going to serve you. And a guy with Jaden Daniels' skills and his multi-tool talent chest, I think it just makes him even more dangerous. So I think that's the move that at the end of the season we could say hit the most. Which one could bust the loudest? It's hard to call it a bust, right? Because Jacob Martin didn't exactly come in with like huge fanfare and all that stuff. But if Jacob Martin can't be at least a serviceable outside option on the opposite of Frankie Louvu, like Dante Fowler Jr. was, I'm kind of wondering where they're going to generate that from this season. Could be Jordan McGee on that other side. So again, there's a little bit of context that needs to be added there as well. But overall, like what the Commanders have done as we go through the season, evaluating which of these moves hit, miss, and where the upgrades could come in 2026 regardless, the Commanders currently have the 6th most salary cap space in the NFL next year. So keep that in mind when your Cowboy fan friends kind of ridicule you about Javon Kinlaw. Just let them know, hey, even with that $16.2 million cap hit next year, Commanders still have the 6th most money to spend in 2026. And that includes a $5.6 million void year hit that will likely be erased after Terry McLaurin signs his next extension. So you can add $5.6 million to that number. Of course, Terry McLaurin's contract will eat into that number, but either way, Washington Commanders are sitting very, very good when it comes to money to spend in 2026 and beyond. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to go back into the mailbag a little later in the week this week, because we started later in the week because I was sick to start the week. So we didn't get started till Tuesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday usually is our mailbag. We'll do it Thursday here because of the late start. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text them directly to me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Thanks for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today and every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast as teams invest in depth, culture, and long-term vision. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino break down what those decisions mean for roster construction league-wide. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you every day. I appreciate you every day, and I thank you today and every day. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.